Hi, welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video and welcome back to my channel. My name is Swamp Rose and I'm continuing my podcast. So if I had to summarize this video into 2 words, it would be alternative suspects. So since my last video, there's been some documents uploaded to Brian Kohlberger's case. And I'm going to read directly from a new document that was just released a couple days ago. This document came in really hot into the true crime community. Right prior to this document came out, we had the subpoena ducis tecum, which with it carries criminal offenses if not answered by the prosecution, trying to compel evidence. We also had Brian Kohlberger's 21st supplemental request for discovery. So just keep that in mind as I'm reading you this brief paragraph. It's titled Motions to Compel Material and Sanctions. And the part I'm going to read to you is the argument part. The wind is crazy. I don't know if you can hear that through here. It goes on to say, and I'll display it right in the screen so you can see. It goes on to say, this is a capital murder case, and nothing about it is clear. The expert issues are complex, involving many different facets of DNA, cellular data, cell tower coverage, drive testing, car identification, crime scene and blood spatter analysis, fingerprint analysis, forensic pathology, electronic device analysis of the suspect, victims, and alternative suspects. So really that's the part of this document that I'm focusing on for this video. What I will do is I'll link the document below in case you want to go read it for yourself. Or if you'd like to join my Discord server, we post all these documents there. I will leave a link down below in the comments. All right, so let's talk about this. So one of my mods, Angel D, made a really interesting observation when it comes to alternative suspects. So if we go back to the beginning of this case, the very initial judge, Judge Megan Marshall, had a hearing for no contact orders. And when she was going down the no contact orders, what Angel D pointed out is she was reading them. She got to a list of people and she skipped that page. You could see her actually reading it aloud to herself, but she wasn't saying it aloud for the rest of the courtroom to see. So, I mean, the point of me bringing that up is just to be clear, there is a list of people that are protected. And what we're trying to figure out now, are these confidential informants? Are these alternative suspects? Are these co-defendants? Who are these people? In June of 2023, Jay Logston from BK's defense team made an interesting argument for parallel construction of the investigation. And I'm going to read a quote from Jay Logston. He went on to say in one of these court documents, rather than seeing it as some sort of complex IgG tree building that led to him, it appears far more likely that a lineup where the government has already been aware of who they wanted to target. So this kind of makes me think back to when we saw the additional financial sun is like getting out of control. So this kind of Okay, so the summer after Brian Kohlberger was arrested in 2023, there were additional financial records, warrants requests, and these financial records were for all 4 of the victims plus 2 redacted names. These financial records went as so far as warranting information from the Department of Labor, so they're pretty extensive. So I'm just going to bring up a few speculations. So it is speculated. It has been speculated that the federal grand jury was before the IgG results came in. It was not homicide related. It was rumored to be a week after the unalivings. So my question is, were the feds investigating one of the victims? And is that what led to Brian Kohlberger? Is that the confidential informant they're talking about? So remember that one of the victim's fathers said that we're going to see something gross at trial. And I can't even imagine what he meant by that. But when I think of these subpoenas, if it had something to do with the victim for financial records, these additional financial subpoenas in the summer. So let's talk about alternative suspects. So if I were Ellie, who would I look at for alternative suspects? So everything I'm about to say is just 100% speculation and not even necessarily my opinion, just where I would turn if I were looking for evidence. We talk about Brian Kohlberger's sample being found on the knife sheath. Well, who's to say these unknown samples weren't also found on the knife sheath? Another thing I will bring up is I was listening to Miss Potts yesterday, and she was talking about Bicca Barlow's declaration. And what Bicca Barlow was saying is she could see that 3 to 4 profiles were uploaded to CODIS. Now, you don't just go uploading unknown profiles. They have to be suspected part of the crime. She needed these complete profiles to complete her discovery, and she was denied them. What would relevant unknown samples to CODIS be so relevant to the crime, but not relevant to the DNA expert or who else could build maybe a family tree? Now, another thing I want to bring up about these unknown samples that were uploaded to CODIS in this case, Brian Kohlberger's sample was degraded so much they couldn't upload it to CODIS. They had to send it to labs to do workup, but all 3 of these unknown samples were large enough to actually load their samples to CODIS. Now, I don't know what that means, but I thought I'd pass the information on to you. So if I were law enforcement, the second place that I would look would be the fingerprint. So we found out in this new document, there's a fingerprint. Now, what's interesting is it's the defense bringing up this fingerprint. And they are saying they need a fingerprint analysis. What struck me is if the fingerprint was such an obvious match to the defendant, why would they need analysis on it? There's obviously some sort of debate with this fingerprint. So the next place I'd look are the people who discovered the victims. And all of those people have been questioned and clear. And with that said, I would widen the search to the surrounding neighborhood, especially for neighbors who had a clear view of the home, because we know that voyeurism is part of the dark triad of escalation with extreme offenders. I would particularly pay close attention to those that had no alibi or those that avoided questioning, particularly if they inserted themselves into the media. We did hear of a second motion to compel discovery in verbiage about a co-defendant. Therefore, if I were Ellie, I would be looking at those near BK, particularly those that had behavior changes after the crime. Don't forget, on the same day that BK left to travel home for Christmas break, one of Brian Kohlberger's neighbors had a breakdown. And ultimately, the result was a standoff and his unaliving by law enforcement. Now, it's worth mentioning because Brian Kohlberger's father mentioned this while driving home in a traffic stop. So I'm mentioning it now. But lastly, I'm going to go back to the 71 federal grand jury subpoenas. What type of crime would require that many subpoenas? I've heard cybercrimes, money laundering, or rugs. And there were the early rumors that there was rug activity at the house. I do not bring up those rumors because nothing has ever been substantiated. But if we were to consider rugs, it makes me think of the Project Sea Glass. It also makes me think of the Quad City Task Force, who operates in that area. I want to just speculate really quickly on these so a couple last things on these federal grand jury subpoenas. So we know that at least 2 of the cell phones involved in this went offline right before 3 a.m. the night of the unalivings. We know no distress calls were made, yet according to the Facebook post from the company that did the cleanup of the crime scene, the crime was horrific and violent, and a battle happened on the 2nd floor. 6 young adults in a home with 6 separate cell phones and no distress calls. Speculating here, but could we be looking at a cell phone tower interceptor? That's federal level. Could we be looking at a cell phone tower interceptor monitoring that area or that address, causing distress calls to be dropped? The cell phone tower interceptor is considered a confidential informant as well. They were talking about this in the hearings. They would be referring to a cell phone tower interceptor as a confidential informant. And it's protected by the DOJ and non-disclosure agreements signed by the city. They are notorious for interfering with distress calls to the point where citizens have won lawsuits against cities for calls being dropped from 911 calls being dropped from these devices. Like very large lawsuits have been won against these cell phone tower interceptors. So we know that the parents of the victims reserved their right to sue the city and to sue the university if there was wrongdoing or safety issues in this case. They reserved that right in 2023 and they reserved it for 2 years. So in the next 2 months, if the parents want to bring a lawsuit, we will be seeing that in February. It kind of seems unfair though, because the parents haven't seen what happened. They're not going to see the evidence, until fall of 2025. So how would they even know if wrongdoing was done? I mean, the defense doesn't even know what the prosecution has. All right. So I just want to bring the question back to you. Do you think there's an alternative suspect in this case? Do you think that there is a co-defendant in this case that we haven't heard of? Do you think there are confidential informants other than the IGG? And if you do think there's confidential informants, what are they related to? What do you think these federal grand jury subpoenas are for? So I hope you have a great day and good luck with all of your New Year's resolutions. Don't be too hard on yourself. Thank you so much for watching and God bless. Thank you so much for watching and God bless.